My brother sold our family's land because he thought I died in Afghanistan. They say the worst part of war is the things you bring back with you. But for me, it was what I didn't come back to. I stepped off that plane in San Diego with nothing but a duffel bag and the faint tremor in my hands I still can't shake. There were no cameras, no welcome signs. Just hot tarmac and the quiet ache of being back in a world that moved on without me. I was supposed to be dead. That's what they told my family after the ambush outside Herat. My unit was hit hard. 5 killed, 3 wounded, and me missing in action. My tags got ripped from my neck in the explosion. They found blood, not a body. I was listed as presumed Kia. And the letters went out. The condolences. The flag for my father. A eulogy I never heard. But I wasn't dead. Not even close. A group of Afghan locals found me half buried in rubble, unconscious but breathing. Took me to a clinic miles from base. No ID, no phone, just bandages and confusion. It took months to get back to U.S. command. And by then, the story had already been written without me. I spent the next 8 months in a military hospital in Germany, recovering and being debriefed. Red tape, psych evaluations, endless paperwork. They kept saying things like administrative resurrection and reintegration protocol, like I was some bad database entry they had to fix. By the time I was cleared to fly home, I didn't even know what home was anymore. I hadn't spoken to my brother in 2 years. Not since before deployment. We weren't exactly close, but he was blood. We'd fought about the land before I left. The farm our grandfather built, the only thing we ever inherited that had any damn value. I wanted to keep it, preserve what was left of our family legacy. He wanted to sell. Said it was a money pit. I told him he could wait until I got back. I guess he thought I never would. The drive from the airport to my hometown was quiet. I didn't call ahead. I didn't want a scene. I needed to see it for myself. And when I did, the house was gone. Not just boarded up, gone. Bulldozed. Flattened. In its place stood a half-finished housing development, all cheap siding and cul-de-sac dreams. The oak tree I carved my name into as a kid. Uprooted. The barn where we buried our dog Shadow. Paved over. My entire childhood erased like a chalk drawing in the rain. I pulled over and just stared. Mouth dry, pulse in my throat. A young couple walked by with a stroller, glancing at me like I didn't belong. Maybe I didn't. I was a ghost, standing on the grave of a life I'd been trying to come back to. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight I thought it might snap. I drove straight to my brother's house. Not the trailer he used to live in. No, he was doing well now. Fancy 2-story in the suburbs, a boat in the driveway, a Ring camera blinking at me like an accusation. He answered the door in golf shorts and sunglasses. "Chris," he said, blinking like he'd seen a mirage. "Hey, Eric," I said. Surprised to see me? He just stood there, frozen. Then he said the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. "We thought you were dead." "No," I said, stepping inside. "You just hoped I was." He didn't say a word at first, just stared like he was trying to figure out if I was real. I walked past him into the living room, all beige walls and Pottery Barn catalog vibes, and dropped my bag by the door. The silence stretched. "When did you get back?" he finally asked. "Yesterday. You should have called. I didn't think I needed a reservation to come see my brother." He flinched, barely. I could see the gears turning in his head, trying to find the right words, something that wouldn't blow everything up. "I didn't sell the land because I wanted to," he said. "I didn't have a choice." I laughed, cold and bitter. "You always had a choice, Eric. You just chose the check." He shifted his weight, crossed his arms. "You were declared dead, Chris. Officially. There was paperwork. A funeral. What was I supposed to do?" "Wait," I snapped. "Just like you said you would." His jaw clenched. I waited. For almost a year. The bills were piling up, taxes, upkeep, everything. I couldn't do it alone. The place was falling apart. "So you bulldozed our childhood and cashed out." He looked away. It wasn't just about the money. It was about moving forward. "You don't move forward by erasing the past," I said. "You bury it. There's a difference." Eric ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "Look, man, you're here now. That's what matters. We can figure something out. There's some money from the sale. I haven't touched all of it." I stared at him. "You think this is about money?" He shrugged helplessly. "Then what's it about?" "It's about being forgotten," I said. "About being erased. About coming home to find out you've been replaced by subdivisions and HOA fees." He didn't answer. just sat down on the couch and rubbed his temples like this was all some inconvenience. I looked around the room, spotless, sterile, curated, and wondered how long it had taken him to forget me. A week? A month? Did he even cry when they told him I was gone? There was a photo on the mantel, Eric and his wife, smiling on a ski trip. No mention of me. No sign I ever existed. I walked over and turned it face down. "I'm not staying here," I said. "Just wanted to see your face when you realized you sold out your own blood." "Chris, come on." I shook my head. "You made your choice. Now you get to live with it." I picked up my bag, walked to the door, and paused just long enough to say one last thing. "I didn't die over there, Eric. But something sure as hell did." Then I left and didn't look back. I checked into the cheapest motel I could find on the outskirts of town. One of those places where the sign's half lit and the vending machine only eats your quarters. The room smelled like mildew and bad decisions, but it had 4 walls and a door that locked. After 2 years of tents and compounds, I figured I could manage. That night, I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling fan as it creaked in slow, rhythmic misery. My thoughts were louder than the highway outside. I kept thinking about the land, the stretch of earth my grandfather plowed with his bare hands, the same land I used to run barefoot across every summer. The trees swing, the cornrows, the way my father's voice carried at dusk when he called us in for supper. Gone. All of it. Traded for sidewalks and 0 lot lines. My brother signed it all away, piece by piece, like none of it ever mattered. And now he wanted to play nice? Offer me a slice of the blood money? No, not a chance. The next morning, I walked the perimeter of the old property. What used to be our field was now a skeleton of a neighborhood, wooden frames and concrete slabs. One of the workers gave me a sideways glance, but didn't stop me. I kept my distance, didn't trespass, just observed. In the far corner, near where the creek used to run, I saw it. A single tree that had somehow survived, gnarled and stubborn, clinging to a scrap of earth like it remembered. I walked over and placed my hand on the bark. My initials were still there. Faded, weathered, but there. C.W., carved when I was 9 years old with a pocket knife I wasn't supposed to have. I stood there for a long time, hand on that scarred trunk, trying not to cry. Because if I did, I might not stop. That night, I had dinner at a bar off Route 17. The kind of place where the lights are dim and the beer is cold and nobody asks questions. I recognized the bartender, Jen. She went to high school with us. "Chris," she said, squinting at me. I nodded. "Jesus, we thought you were." "Yeah," I said. Everyone did. She came around the bar and hugged me without asking. That simple act nearly unraveled me. It was the first real human warmth I'd felt in years. "Let me buy your first drink," she said, eyes glossy. We talked a while. She filled in some gaps, who'd moved, who'd married, who'd died. When I asked about my brother, her smile faded. "Eric's doing fine," she said carefully. "New job, new wife. Always out at the country club." "Sounds about right." She hesitated. "You know about the land, right?" "Yeah." He said he waited. Said he didn't want to sell it, but... I held up a hand. "He said the same to me. Doesn't change what he did." Jen nodded. She didn't press. She just poured me another drink and sat with me until close. As I stumbled back to the motel under the weight of too many beers and too many memories, I realized something. I didn't come back looking for money. I didn't even come back looking for revenge. I came back to see if I still had a place in this world. So far, the answer was no. But that didn't mean I'd stop looking. Not yet. The next morning, I found myself parked outside the county clerk's office before they even opened. I didn't know what I was looking for, exactly. Maybe proof that what Eric did was legal. Maybe a name. Someone else to be mad at. The woman behind the counter looked up, startled, as I stepped in. She wore glasses on a chain and the expression of someone who'd seen every flavor of small-town nonsense. "Can I help you?" I nodded. "I need property records. On a parcel that used to belong to the Whitley family. My grandfather's farm." "Got a parcel number?" "Just the name and address. I can draw you a map from memory." She gave a slight smile and started typing. It didn't take long. She printed out a thin stack and slid it across the counter. "Looks like it sold 18 months ago. Signed by Eric Whitley. Full transfer." I flipped through. The buyer's name was a corporate entity, something generic like Silver Point Developments. The signatures were there. Eric's bold and sure. Not a hesitation in sight. Did he do this alone? No other family signatures required? She shook her head. Not if he had power of attorney or full ownership. Looks like the deed was solely in his name. My jaw tightened. He must have transferred it behind my back years ago, before deployment. Maybe even while I was away. Legal, maybe. But right? Not even close. Is there a copy of the power of attorney? She hesitated. It's not in this file. But you can request the full transaction history. Might take a few days. I nodded, gave her my information, and left with a stomach full of acid. I drove aimlessly after that. Past the diner where Mom used to take us after church. Past the creek where I broke my wrist jumping from the rope swing. Everything looked smaller. Faded. Like someone had turned the contrast down on my memories. Eventually, I found myself outside a school. Not just any school, the one Eric and I went to as kids. I pulled into the lot and sat there watching recess. Kids ran screaming across the grass like their bodies couldn't contain the joy. It hit me hard. That used to be us. That carefree chaos. Before deployments. Before funerals. Before betrayal. I didn't notice the car pull up beside me until someone knocked on my window. It was Eric's wife, Melissa. She looked different, tighter, maybe. Expensive haircut. Yoga clothes that never saw a gym. "Chris," she said, surprised. "You're back. Guess the news made it around." She nodded. "Eric told me. But he didn't tell you everything." She frowned. "He said you were upset about the house. The farm. Said you didn't understand." I barked a short laugh. Didn't understand? "Melissa, he sold my inheritance while I was listed as dead. You think I don't understand betrayal?" She crossed her arms. "You were gone, Chris. For 2 years. He waited almost one. We thought you were never coming back. So that makes it okay?" "No," she said softly. "But it makes it complicated." I looked away. My chest was tight. "He wasn't trying to hurt you," she added. "He just didn't know what else to do. He could have waited." "He could have," she agreed. "But you weren't here." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because she was right in the most brutal way. I wasn't there. And the world doesn't pause for ghosts. As she turned to leave, she said something that stuck with me. "He cried, you know, when they told him. He really thought he lost you." I didn't say anything. Because I didn't know if that made it better or worse. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay there in the dark with the hum of the motel mini fridge and the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. Melissa's words kept echoing. "He really thought he lost you." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But belief and forgiveness aren't the same thing. Around 5 a.m., I got in the car and drove. No destination, just the need to keep the wheels turning so my mind didn't collapse in on itself. Somewhere between the fog lifting off the fields and the sun cutting through the rear view, I realized I needed to do one last thing. I turned onto an old gravel road that led to the cemetery, the one where my father was buried, where we laid him to rest under a maple tree that always turned blood red in the fall. The gate squeaked as I opened it. The place was quiet, untouched. I found his headstone easily, simple, unadorned, the way he wanted it. John Whitley, 1948 to 2006. Farmer. Father. I crouched down and brushed away some leaves. My throat tightened. "Hey, Dad," I whispered. "It's me, Chris." I sat there for a while, just breathing, trying to find words. Eventually, they came. "I'm back. Not the way I thought I'd be, but I made it. They said I died, and for a while, maybe I did. Not physically, but something inside. Something broke over there. And when I came home, I thought I could pick up the pieces." I ran a hand over the cool stone. "But the house is gone. The land's gone. Eric sold it. Said he had no choice. Said he thought I was never coming back." My voice cracked. I swallowed hard. "You'd hate what he did. I know you would. You told us that land wasn't just soil, it was history. Blood. You said every acre carried a story. And now those stories are buried under asphalt and property lines." I leaned back and stared at the tree above. But maybe I was wrong, too. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe ghosts don't get to come home and act like nothing's changed. Silence. Then a breeze picked up, just enough to rustle the leaves. It felt like something. Not an answer, but a presence. I stood slowly. "I'll figure it out," I said. "I don't know how yet, but I will." As I turned to leave, I saw another figure a few rows down. Older man, gray beard, wearing a ball cap. I didn't recognize him. He gave me a nod. I nodded back. Small towns, you learn to read silence like a language. Back at the motel, I found an envelope slipped under my door. My name. No return address. Inside was a check, $30,000. No note, no explanation. Just that and a copy of the deed transfer paperwork. Eric must have sent it. It felt like hush money. Or maybe guilt. Either way, I folded it and shoved it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to decide what to do with it. Because this wasn't about money. Not anymore. It was about something much older. Much deeper. It was about whether blood still meant something. Or if I'd come home to find out it never really had. I didn't touch the check for days. It sat there in the drawer like a ticking bomb. Not dangerous in itself, but filled with everything I didn't want to feel. Guilt. Resentment. A history that wouldn't sit still. Instead, I started looking for work. I didn't want to rely on Eric's money. I didn't even want to look at it. I needed something of my own, a reason to stay, or at least a reason not to run. It turns out, not many places are looking for a combat vet with a limp and a short fuse. But I got lucky. Jen, the bartender from the other night, hooked me up with her cousin, who ran a small construction crew. Nothing fancy, he told me over the phone. Demo, hauling, framing. You in? I said yes before he even finished. I didn't care about the pay. I just needed to move. To sweat. To do something that didn't involve sitting in a motel with ghosts. The work was brutal, but I liked it. It hurt in the right ways. My hands got calloused again. My muscles started remembering the rhythm of effort. I slept better. Not good, but better. At least I wasn't dreaming about sand and gunfire every night. A week passed. Then another. And just when I thought I was starting to settle, Eric showed up. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was finishing up on a site near the edge of town when I saw his truck pull up. Clean. Polished. Too perfect for the gravel lot it sat in. He got out, hands in his pockets, looking smaller than I remembered. Can we talk? He asked. I nodded once and walked around to the side of the building where it was quiet. He followed. You get the envelope? I did. He waited, but I didn't say anything else. Just let the silence stretch. Look, Chris. I screwed up. Yeah. I thought I was doing what made sense. The land, it was drowning me. The taxes, the upkeep. And you were gone. I crossed my arms. So you buried me. He winced. That's not fair. Neither was selling everything Dad left us. He took a breath. You're right. I should have waited. I should have done a lot of things differently. But I panicked. I didn't know how to carry all of it alone. You weren't alone, Eric. You just had to hold on. He looked at me then, really looked. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. And when you walked through my door, it was like seeing a ghost. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that makes two of us. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an old photo. It was faded, creased at the corners. Us, maybe 10 and 12, sitting on the porch steps, legs swinging, popsicles in hand. I found this after you left, he said. Didn't know I still had it. He handed it to me, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. The kid in that picture still believed in things like forever, in family, in promises. I can't fix what I did, Eric said. But if there's any part of you that still wants a brother, I'm here. I stared at the photo, then back at him. I don't know, I said honestly. It's going to take more than a check. He nodded. I figured. And then he left, leaving me with dust on my boots and the past clutched in my hand. I didn't throw the photo away, but I didn't put it in my wallet either. A few nights later, I found myself back at the old bar. Jen slid me a drink before I even asked. Rough day? She asked. I nodded. Eric came by. Wow. What did he say? Apology. Of sorts. She raised an eyebrow. And, still deciding, she leaned on the bar. You know, when we were kids, everyone thought you and Eric were like twins. You finished each other's sentences. Broke the same bones. I let out a dry laugh. That was a long time ago. Doesn't mean it wasn't real. The place filled with the sound of a bad cover band starting up in the corner. Jen moved on to serve someone else, and I sat back, nursing the drink and the ache behind my ribs. When I got back to the motel that night, there was a voicemail waiting. It was from my Aunt Carol, Dad's sister. Chris, I just heard you're back. I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. Your uncle and I would love to have you over. We've missed you. I listened to it twice. Then a third time. Not everyone had moved on. That weekend, I went. Carol had baked the same blueberry cobbler she used to make when we were kids. Her hugs hadn't changed. Her stories hadn't either. It felt like a pocket of time untouched by all the chaos. We sat out back under the same wind chimes that used to annoy Eric and me as boys. She asked if I'd seen him. I told her I had. You know, she said, sipping sweet tea, your dad would have wanted you two to fix things. I looked away. Dad would have been furious. Oh, no doubt, she chuckled. But he also believed in second chances. He gave your uncle one after he crashed the truck into the grain silo. Remember that? I smiled despite myself. He grounded him for 2 months. But he didn't give up on him. That's the part people forget. That night, I pulled the check out again. Stared at it. 30 grand. Enough to leave town. Start over. Hell, even buy a small place somewhere. But I wasn't done here yet. Instead, I wrote a letter. Took me 3 drafts before it felt right. Eric, I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I see the effort. That matters. I don't want your money. I want something real. So if you're serious, prove it. Show me you care about more than just checking boxes. Chris. I didn't mail it. I dropped it off in his mailbox just after dawn. Let the silence do what it does best, make people listen. It took him 3 days to reply. No letter. No voicemail. He just showed up at the work site, dust on his boots and a look in his eyes I hadn't seen since we were kids. He waited until break, then walked over and handed me a box. Wooden, handmade, polished smooth like someone had actually cared. What's this? Something Dad kept in the barn. I found it when we were cleaning out his stuff after the funeral. I meant to give it to you, but well. I opened the lid. Inside were old photos. Letters. A baseball glove so small it had to be mine from T-ball. And at the bottom, wrapped in a faded cloth, Dad's watch. I swallowed hard. Why now? He looked down. Because I finally get it. It wasn't about the land. It was about what it meant. And I can't give that back. But maybe this is a start. I didn't know what to say. The wind picked up around us. Dust, noise, hammering in the distance, but none of it registered. I'm not asking you to forgive me today, he said. Or tomorrow. Hell, maybe never. I just want you to know. I miss having a brother. I closed the box and nodded. Not a yes. Not a no. Just something in between. We didn't talk much after that. He left. I went back to work. But something had shifted. That weekend, I drove out to the only remaining tree on the old farm property, the one with my initials carved into it. I brought the glove, slid it on. It barely fit over my hand now, but it still felt like mine. And for the first time since I'd come back, I let myself cry. Not out of anger, but because I finally realized I hadn't come home to what I lost. I'd come home to find out what still remained. The past was gone. But maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over yet. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I drove instead. No music, no phone. Just the open road and the weight of everything I'd carried since I touched American soil again. By the time I pulled into the driveway of Aunt Carol's house, the sky was bleeding into orange and violet. She didn't ask questions, just made coffee and let me sit in silence. Later, as we watched the sun go down from the porch swing, she said, sometimes things have to break before they can be rebuilt. Even families. Especially families. I nodded. It was all I could manage. The next morning, I took the check from Eric and brought it to the local VFW. I want to donate this, I told the post commander. Anonymous. For guys coming home who don't have anyone waiting for them. The man looked at me for a long time, then just said, thank you. That felt better than I expected. Like maybe some small piece of all this mess could become something useful. The days started filling up. Work. Meals with Carol. I even went back to the school and volunteered to help repaint the old gym. The principal said they'd take whatever help they could get. One of the teachers remembered me. Another asked if I'd ever considered speaking to the students about resilience, about coming home. Coming home. I still wasn't sure I'd done that. Not fully, but I was closer. Closer than I'd been in a long, long time. Eric and I started exchanging texts. Just small stuff at first. Weather. Football. Then he invited me over for dinner. I said yes. It was awkward. The kind of awkward only blood can create. But it wasn't fake. And when Melissa pulled me aside after dessert and said, he talks about you all the time now. He keeps your picture on his desk. Something in me softened. After dinner, Eric handed me a folder. Inside were papers, copies of the original deed, property maps, even letters from our grandfather written decades ago. I thought you should have these, he said. I kept them. Just didn't know if it was my place to share. I thumbed through them, stopping at one in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. It ended with, this land only matters if it's held by hands that remember. I looked up at Eric. You remember? He didn't hesitate. Every day. And maybe that was enough. Not for everything. Not to erase the damage. But enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, we still had a story worth telling. A month later, I stood in front of a half-built house on the edge of the old farm property. Not ours anymore, not really, but close enough. The tree with my initials was still there. The one thing left standing from the world I remembered. Jen pulled up in her pickup, toolbox in the bed. "You sure about this?" she asked, stepping out. I nodded. Figured if I'm gonna stay, might as well make something of it. We were rebuilding the old tool shed. Not because we needed it, because it meant something. Something about starting over, one board at a time. Eric showed up later with a cooler full of beers and 2 sets of gloves. He didn't say much, just handed me a hammer and started working beside me. That's how it went for the next few weekends. Quiet effort. Occasional stories. No forced apologies. Just time. Shared sweat. Old scars healing beneath new calluses. People in town started noticing. Jen said someone at the diner called us the Whitley boys again. I didn't correct them. One morning, I found an envelope at the rebuilt shed. Inside was a photo, me and Eric as kids, sitting on the tractor. On the back, in Eric's handwriting, "Still your brother. Always." I didn't cry. I just stood there, hand on the frame, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I don't know what comes next. Maybe I'll buy a plot nearby. Maybe I'll take the job offer at the school. Maybe I'll keep building with my own 2 hands until it all makes sense again. What I do know is this. I'm not a ghost anymore. I'm here. I'm real. I'm home. And that, after everything, is enough.